Red Bull finds itself trapped in a cycle they desperately need to break. Their second seat has become a graveyard for promising careers, and the team knows it. But the real problem isn't the drivers they're choosing, it's the environment they're putting them into. The team's approach has been fundamentally reactive rather than strategic. Each driver failure triggers a panic response. Bring in someone experienced, someone proven, someone who surely can't fail like the last guy. This thinking led them to Sergio Pérez, a race winner with proven racecraft. When that didn't work long-term, they pivoted to youth with Liam Lawson, then back to experience with Yuki Tsunoda. What Red Bull hasn't acknowledged publicly, but their actions suggest they understand, is that their car development philosophy creates an impossible situation. Everything is optimized around Max Verstappen's unique driving style and feedback. Any second driver isn't just competing with Max, they're fighting a car that was never designed for them. This creates a psychological trap. The more a driver struggles, the more they try to adapt to Max's style rather than find their own speed. It's a confidence death spiral that has claimed multiple careers. Red Bull's leadership sees this pattern but has been unwilling to fundamentally change their approach, until now. Hadjar's thinking reveals sophisticated strategic awareness that belies his age. His rejection of an immediate Red Bull promotion isn't humility, it's calculated positioning. He understands that joining Red Bull now would mean inheriting all the problems that destroyed his predecessors. By targeting 2026, Hadjar is essentially betting on a reset. He believes the technical upheaval will force Red Bull to abandon their Max-centric development approach simply because they won't have the data or experience to implement it with a completely new car and power unit. This shows remarkable insight into team dynamics. Hadjar recognizes that the second car problem isn't really about the car. It's about organizational culture and development priorities. A regulation reset forces everyone to start fresh, potentially leveling the psychological playing field between teammates. But there's risk in this strategy. By publicly stating his 2026 preference, Hadjar is essentially rejecting immediate opportunities while banking on future ones that may not materialize. If Red Bull decides on a different direction, or if his form drops, his window could close entirely. Marco's thinking reflects decades of driver evaluation experience, but also the pressure of repeated failures. His Little Prost comparison reveals how he's trying to rationalize Hadjar's potential differently from previous prospects. The Prost reference is crucial because it suggests Marco believes Red Bull needs a different type of driver entirely. Previous attempts focused on finding someone who could match Max's raw speed and aggressive style, but Prost was never the fastest driver. He was the smartest, most calculated, most consistent. This represents a fundamental shift in Red Bull's thinking. Instead of finding another Max, they're considering someone who can complement Max. Marco's emphasis on Hadjar's calmness under pressure and race management skills suggests Red Bull is finally acknowledging that their second driver needs different strengths. However, Marco's praise could also be setting Hadjar up for failure. By creating such high expectations and specific comparisons, he's adding pressure that could backfire. The different label becomes a burden. Hadjar can't just be good, he has to be different enough to break the curse. Mekies occupies a unique position, having worked with both Hadjar at Racing Bulls and now overseeing the Red Bull decision-making process. His measured responses reflect someone balancing multiple competing interests and timelines. His reluctance to rush the decision stems from understanding the cost of getting it wrong. Red Bull's frequent driver changes have damaged their credibility and created instability. Mekies needs to project confidence in whatever decision they make, which means taking time to build consensus internally. But there's also political calculation at play. By maintaining that they have time, Mekies is managing expectations while keeping pressure on both Hadjar and Tsunoda. He can't appear too eager about Hadjar without undermining Tsunoda's confidence, but he also can't seem satisfied with the status quo. The October timeline reveals Red Bull's real thinking. They want to see how both drivers perform under sustained pressure before committing. This isn't just about talent evaluation, it's about psychological assessment under stress. Tsunoda's struggles reveal the fundamental flaw in Red Bull's previous thinking. They assumed experience would translate to immediate competitiveness, but instead found that established drivers have more ingrained habits that conflict with their car's demands. Tsunoda's psychology is working against him. As an experienced driver, he knows what good performance feels like, which makes the Red Bull's difficult handling even more frustrating. Unlike a rookie who might accept struggle as part of learning, Tsunoda knows he's capable of more, creating mental pressure that compounds the physical challenges. Honda's influence adds another layer of complexity. Tsunoda represents significant commercial and technical relationships for Red Bull, but those partnerships expire with the 2026 regulations anyway. This gives Red Bull permission to make a purely performance-based decision without diplomatic consequences. The timing pressure on Tsunoda creates a vicious cycle. Knowing his seat is under threat makes him more likely to overdrive and make mistakes, which further undermines his position. Red Bull's public timeline essentially ensures Tsunoda will struggle psychologically regardless of the car's performance. Hadjar's confidence in the 2026 reset solving Red Bull's driver problems might be misplaced. Regulation changes often amplify existing team characteristics rather than eliminating them. If Red Bull's culture naturally gravitates toward Max-centric development, new regulations might just give them new ways to implement the same approach. The power unit transition creates additional risks. Red Bull will be dealing with their own engine for the first time, adding complexity that could make driver development even more challenging. A struggling second driver becomes more problematic when you're also learning your own power unit characteristics. There's also the possibility that 2026 regulations favor teams with different philosophies entirely. Red Bull's assumption that they'll remain competitive enough to justify promoting a rookie could prove false. If they're fighting for midfield points rather than podiums, the calculus around driver selection changes completely. Red Bull's driver academy faces existential questions about its purpose and effectiveness. Years of second seat failures have undermined confidence in their development system. Promoting Hadjar becomes about more than filling a seat. It's about validating their entire approach to talent development. This creates enormous pressure on Hadjar to succeed, but also incentivizes Red Bull to provide more support than previous drivers received. They need Hadjar to work, which might finally force them to adapt their development approach rather than expecting the driver to adapt to them. However, academy politics could also work against Hadjar. If other prospects like Arvid Lindblad show strong performance in junior categories, Red Bull might decide to wait rather than rush Hadjar's promotion. The academy's depth becomes a reason to be patient rather than decisive. Red Bull's decision-making isn't purely sporting. Hadjar represents a marketable story, young, talented, charismatic, from a major European market. His success would validate their academy system and provide compelling narrative content for their media properties. But commercial considerations could also complicate the decision. If Hadjar struggles initially, the backlash could be more severe because of the hype surrounding his promotion. Red Bull might prefer a lower profile choice that generates less attention and pressure. The timing with their 2026 power unit debut adds commercial stakes. Red Bull needs their driver lineup to project confidence and competence as they transition to manufacturer status. A rookie partnership might send the wrong message to partners and competitors. Max's public support for Hadjar masks more complex considerations. As the team's centerpiece, Verstappen has implicit veto power over teammate selection, but he also understands that his own legacy depends partly on helping develop successful partnerships. Verstappen's thinking likely focuses on minimizing disruption to his own program. A stable, competitive teammate reduces political pressure and media attention while providing better technical feedback. Hadjar's youth could make him more accepting of a clear number 2 role initially. However, Verstappen might also worry about longer-term competition. Hadjar's talent is obvious, and a successful partnership could eventually threaten Max's dominance within the team. This creates tension between short-term stability and long-term competitive threats. Hadjar's confidence and strategic thinking could become liabilities if they create overconfidence. His calm approach to pressure might not translate to the unique stresses of partnering Verstappen, where psychological warfare is subtle but constant. The expectation management becomes crucial. If Hadjar Hadjar believes 2026 solves all problems, he might not prepare adequately for the reality that some challenges will persist. The regulation reset doesn't eliminate team hierarchy, media pressure, or the fundamental difficulty of competing with a generational talent. Red Bull's pattern suggests they might inadvertently sabotage Hadjar by expecting too much too quickly. Their need to validate the promotion could lead to unrealistic performance targets that create the same pressure cycles that destroyed previous drivers. Driver salaries and contract structures influence decisions more than teams admit. Promoting Hadjar saves money compared to hiring established talent, but also reflects confidence in their car's competitiveness. Teams only promote rookies when they believe their package is strong enough to compensate for driver inexperience. Red Bull's willingness to consider Hadjar suggests they expect their 2026 car to be competitive immediately. This could be confidence or delusion. The distinction won't be clear until the cars hit the track. The financial calculation also affects timeline pressure. If Red Bull commits to Hadjar, they need to provide multi-year stability to justify the investment in his development. One-year deals don't provide enough time to properly evaluate driver potential in their specific environment. Red Bull's thinking appears to be evolving toward Hadjar, but their reasoning might be flawed. They're betting that regulatory changes will solve cultural and developmental problems that have persisted across multiple rule sets. This represents hope rather than strategy. Hadjar's approach shows sophisticated understanding of team dynamics, but his confidence in the 2026 reset might be misplaced. The fundamental challenges of partnering Verstappen won't disappear because the cars change. The most likely outcome isn't Hadjar's immediate success or failure, but a prolonged evaluation period that creates the same pressure cycles that have undermined previous drivers. Red Bull's pattern suggests they'll expect quick results while providing limited support, setting up another potential failure. The Hadjar situation reveals as much about Red Bull's institutional thinking as it does about driver talent. Until they address the fundamental cultural and developmental issues that create their second seat problem, changing drivers remains a cosmetic solution to structural problems. But perhaps that's exactly what makes this story so compelling. We're watching a young driver bet his career on his ability to succeed where others have failed, while a championship team gambles on change without fully understanding what needs to change. The next 9 races won't just determine Hadjar's future, they'll reveal whether Red Bull has learned from their mistakes or is doomed to repeat them with a new victim.